the thing about branding, it's not about what the founder thinks, it's about what the consumer thinks. You know, you have some core values, some skeleton, some brand corporate colors and a logo, it's a brand. But basically, brand takes time to form because it's based on consumer sentiment and also what you promise and whether you fulfill the promise over time. Let's say what happens if a customer loses a ring. You know, what is the correct procedure, right? I mean, in terms of the typical way of a TNC, it could be like, just purchase a new ring, right? But in terms of the brand, what we usually do, you know, we give them a super cut price deal because they're already a customer. And it's often in these moments where you are able to create a different impact on the customer itself. And then they say, I'm so lucky to have gotten from you. And I'm like, that's the brand.
Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode of SleekTalks, where the conversation flow. Hosted by SleekFlow, I'm your host Asnawi Jufrie, and today we have a very special guest. We have Donovan Siah with us today, founder of Diamond Ateliers. Diamond Ateliers, if you don't know, is a bespoke jewelry brand started in 2019. Don actually comes from a third-generation family in diamonds. His grandfather started the business in Hong Kong, and his father expanded it in the manufacturing side, and Don came in to actually expand on the B2C side. He started DA from a side hustle, doing virtual consultations from home while having a full-time job. Very, very impressive. No shop front, no staff, just Don, laptop, right?
That's right.
And today he has become a bigger brand. You have a showroom now, congratulations, in Orchard. And you have up to 100 custom rings produced in a month.
Yes, that's right. Thanks for having me, Navi.
So yeah, welcome to SleekTalks. Thank you so much for joining us today, Don.
No, it's my pleasure to be here.
All right, so before we start, with every guest, we'll always ask them to share 3 raw insights. These raw insights can be real painful lessons or things that people might not know about, but if they knew before starting, it will help them a lot in their building journey or their founding journey. So Don, what is your 3 key raw insights? Maybe the first one.
I think the first one has to be, you know, building a brand takes way longer than what people think.
Right, that's a very good one. I like that one. How about the second one?
Then the second one is that you have to accept the fact that not everyone will like you, and that's absolutely okay.
Very, very, very on point. And the last one?
And the third one is that the thing about branding, it's not about what the founder thinks, it's about what the consumer thinks.
All right, there's a lot to pack in from there. Let's strip it away. First one, yeah. I want to talk about what you mentioned. Building a brand takes way longer than what people think. What do you mean by that?
So I think, you know, when you are in the inception of a business, you think that, you know, you have some core values, some skeleton, some brand corporate colors and a logo, it's a brand. But basically, brand takes time to form because it's based on consumer sentiment and also what you promise and whether you fulfill the promise over time. And sometimes the time works very, very differently, right? Sometimes brands can be formed in a matter of months, but usually the legacy brands that we see in the market today, they are formed over decades.
Yeah.
And even, you know, some are even hundreds of years.
Yeah. And do you think this is more prevalent in different types of industry? I mean, if you look at it, for example, in AI right now, there are a lot of AI companies that you hear their brand so fast, right? You have Anthropic, you have OpenAI, you have brands like Lovable, for example. Maybe you hear SleekFlow, maybe.
Yeah, SleekFlow as well.
Right? And maybe for jewelry, it is not so similar to B2B tech, right? Where it's about rings. Takes a lot of time for trust to be built. Do you think when you talk about time in building a brand, especially in jewelry, it has to be a longer duration? It cannot be in like one day, for example.
Well, I think, you know, there are some similarities that you can pull, you know, whether it's, you know, even you mentioned about B2B and all that, it still took them time.
Yeah.
It's just that the way that they did it could be different timing for different industries. Like for your example on like your whole AI, your Anthropic, they also took some time to build the whole base. And of course, they accelerated very, very quickly as they acquired a lot of customers. And they, of course, built an amazing brand today. And of course, they are worth almost 1 trillion, even before IPO, right? And I think even for jewelry, you know, similarly, you know, it's the same concept where you do have to actually try to acquire customers and acquire enough for you to form that perception of a brand. And of course, in terms of like, if you're going to compare like the whole jewelry scene to, let's say, the AI scene, it's completely different in the sense of the customer acquisition. Where in terms of, let's say, jewelry brands, maybe you're talking about 50, 100 customers a month. You know, maybe you're talking 50 to 100 customers a second if you're talking about AI customers, companies, and that is totally different scale.
Right. If you were to look at DA, how many years do you think it took for it to become, in your opinion, a strong enough brand in Singapore?
I would say it took me almost close to the 5-6 year mark.
Wow.
where you know, I had a more steady stream of customers, you know, and that gave me the so-called the courage to actually take the next step to open a retail. I think it took me that long, and of course, you know, we there's a lot of other metrics that we see as well in terms of, let's say, you know, how many of our customers, you know, are referred, you know, how do we, you know, gather the appointments, are we on an increasing, declining, or decreasing kind of, you know, sales as well, whether it matches with the appointment creations and all that. So I mean, in the basic sense of, you know, the building blocks of a business, I think most business will follow almost the same blocks. It's just that, of course, we're all looking at different numbers.
Right. Okay. And I want to dive into the second one you mentioned, right?
Yes.
That if you really want to build, you have to be okay that not everyone will like you. And I think that's very difficult for some people, or most people. I mean, who wants to be not liked? Everybody wants to be not just liked, but loved.
Absolutely.
Right. And you say it's necessary. Where is this coming from? Is it your personal experience? Have you faced a situation where you had to decide, or is this from seeing how your father or your family business is being run? Where is this coming from?
So I think this, you know, comes a lot from, you can think of it as positioning.
Okay.
You know, where you, by selecting a position that you want in the market, you are also selecting a position that you don't want in the market. You know, just a very, very simple one is like, you know, you do have people using Anthropic and you have people using ChatGPT, right?
Yep.
And they are basically competing products. Of course, you can use both, but there is no one brand that can eat the whole market, right? Even look at Apple. Apple has Samsung.
Yep.
Even DA, we do have our competitors as well.
Yep.
And sometimes, you know, if we are really looking into like doing the bespoke work, sometimes that means that we are going to unselect the customers that just want off the rack.
Sort of people that fit your ideal customer profile, the ICPs.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you talk about external. What about internal? Is that the same philosophy? Is that the same philosophy that you have internally with your team, where you also have that mindset that not everyone in the team will like you?
I think that's perfectly fine, you know, because I think, you know, as a leader, it's important that you stand for your values and you know what you don't stand for as well.
Okay. So what is an example of you not standing for something?
I would say, you know, for DA, I think at a very key core, you know, at a basic core, it's really how, you know, we put the customer in the center of the business.
Okay.
And we try to, you know, so-called create a value package for them in terms of not just purchasing a ring, but also the after sales that comes to it. And how do we actually go beyond the typical T&Cs in the event that, you know, special situations do occur. And I think it's always in the events where it's not on paper. Like for example, you know, you could talk about, let's say, what happens if a customer loses a ring. You know, what is the correct procedure, right? I mean, in terms of the typical way of a T&C, it could be like, just purchase a new ring, right? But in terms of the brand, you know, what we usually do, you know, we give them a super cut price deal because they're already a customer, you know, and it's often in these moments where you are able to create, you know, a different impact on the customer itself. You know, you're going to turn this guy, not if you're doing it just to turn him into a super supporter, but in the way that the brand respects that, you know, you have already trusted us in the first place.
Right. So you build on trust, you build on community, you build on the network effect, and that's how you grow your brand.
That's right.
And what you're saying is basically, in your philosophy of being customer obsessed, it's a lot of giving and taking. Right?
Absolutely.
Making sure that, of course, if you have to resize or you have to change your things from the ring, if it's some cost of the brand, you will take it, as long as on the customer experience side they have a good end, because that's what you want the experience to be. And you share that a lot about in your interview. All right, great. And last one, right? A brand is built in the customer's mind, not the founders. What do you mean by that?
So a lot of times, when we can have a idea of what we want our brand to be, and of course we will try to influence what our brand is. But very often, the brand is what it is basically what people say about your brand when you're not in the room.
Okay, so what do you think people say about your brand?
Well, I think people think that, we do really good customizations. I think people think we are really down to earth.
Yep.
Right? And people find us very easy to talk to.
Yep.
And I think that is the main impact, and that's the main kind of customers we are looking for as well. And of course, there will be people that maybe they are looking for, I don't know, more formalized service. I don't think we do like that, but we are more casual and all. And pretty much people think we are value for money, I guess.
And was that the vision that you have and you had at the start, or it actually changed?
I think it changed a lot, because like when I first started a business, I mean, as every founder, maybe we look for the easier way where we just want to be low cost. It just seems like, can I do the same thing for less in the market, right? And that was kind of my guiding philosophy at the start.
Okay.
All right. And right now we are actually moving towards more bespoke and providing more value for our customers rather than just like trying to be the cheapest ring in the market right now.
So you change as your customers change. You change with the preference. You try not to stick too stubbornly to what you think, but you follow what the customer. So even in the vision itself and the brand itself, you try to have customers lead the way.
Absolutely. And all this customizations idea actually came from the customers themselves. Right? Because when I first started, I was young, I didn't know anything.
You're still young.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I just thought, it's like so long you give them the cheapest ring in the market. I mean, cheapest in a sense. You kind of get the customer, but actually a lot of customers, they actually want, something special. It's once in a lifetime.
Right.
The guy doesn't mind, spending another, I don't know, 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000, more on a ring if it's, more thoughtfully designed, higher quality, better service, after sales service. So I realized that's what people value, and that's where I started evolving the brand.
All right, so that's really good. I love what you shared about and really unpacking those 3 raw insights. I do want to take a step back about the origin, right? How you built Diamond Ateliers. People all know you as Don of Diamond Ateliers. But you grew up around jewellery. Your grandfather had beauty jewels. Your father ran Sincere Jewels. And you saw the trade from inside out before anybody else. But even then, you chose to go corporate first. Very curious for those listening, they might be in family business as well. It's quite common. Why was that the case? Was that you trying to escape from your rite of passage in the family trade? Or was you trying to prove yourself that you can do something outside first? Or do you want to learn business from a different angle? Could you share with us a bit more about your thought process back then?
So I think, also, I think, for a business to last over generations, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And most of the time, there will be a lot of changes in the family business itself. Even for my granddad, his business actually, died off when he died, which is 20 over years ago. And my dad's business is kind of a little on the sunset side.
Okay.
So when it came to my turn after graduation, I could have, joined my dad, but what I saw was that, it didn't look exactly like what I wanted. It was, a bit sunset. It was a smaller shop, I would say. And I knew that, even if I joined him right then, I couldn't make an impact. And I had to, actually go out there and try to find out, what am I good at? And really try to understand the society even more, right? And to figure out, what can I actually do before actually trying to go back into the family business?
So you always had planned to go back, but you wanted to learn first, learn the trade outside.
Absolutely.
Apply what you can.
Absolutely, because it's very difficult, right? To actually, try to, go in and try to be like the general manager or that. I don't know. It's tough. You know it, You start with learning a certain skill and figuring out what's your star skill.
Right. But is there a certain pressure, because you're third gen? So obviously the bar will always be set higher and higher and higher. And for your grandfather and your father and your business, well, it's all in jewellery, it's all pretty different as well. So is there even more pressure because you're third gen that you have to somehow make sure that you succeed and succeed at a higher level? Was that pressure, or is that no pressure on that part? If there was, I was very curious to have your take on that in terms of how you manage that kind of pressure.
So I think I'm very lucky in that sense that, while my granddad and my dad did hit their higher heights, and I would say even higher than what I have done so far.
So far.
And, I would say that, because by the time when it's like my turn to go in, it's like the business is no longer at the highs, right? So I didn't have the pressure to so-called succeed the business per se, and all I had was to, my dad just became my supplier and I had the opportunity to create a business, and I don't really have a comparison to actually, weigh me down. So I was also given the freedom to actually chase what I wanted to do.
You said many times that DA started because I believe you mentioned you felt when people in Singapore bought engagement ring, it was a very transactional experience. They felt that they are being sold an engagement ring and you didn't want that. What was the moment that you thought about it and said, maybe the industry is too opaque? Maybe I, becoming someone in the jewelry business, although I have no B2C experience, my father's business is B2B, I can make a difference.
So I think, it's a little bit accidental as well. A lot of my business, it started just from friends.
Okay.
Like you would know, right? So I go around my friends and I hear them proposing.
Okay.
And I check the prices and I started to see that, there is a huge markup over like the costing, right?
Okay.
That to me was like a way that I could do it better, right? And I broke down the whole margins and all that. I realized, of course, if I started, sourcing from my dad and of course focusing on the workmanship, all that, we can bring it at a much lower cost in terms of customization. And that value gap that we can create, it's actually a business opportunity.
And were you always thinking about the fact of what other opportunities can I have in the jewelry side? Was that already in your mindset when you started work or even in university? Or was it really truly a coincidence that you hear people getting married and then you realize, wow, it's so expensive, I think I can do better?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? Because like from a younger age, I have already seen my dad doing the business, in the B2B side, and a lot of it, we actually sell a lot to a lot of retailers.
Okay.
And I'm during my younger age, I will always, try to look at my dad clients and, I would kind of ask them like, what are you guys doing? Right? And basically after, quite a bit, it's quite simple, right? They're just literally buying from my dad and they were selling it to their customers in whatever countries they were from.
No
and a
rocket
lot of them,
science.
like from America and all that. And I was like, what? That works, right? So, and I even had some of my dad's clients that were like, they can be like part of Sweden and all that. And they're just like, the wife of a businessman. And she's like, you know what? I'm just going to be a private jeweler. And I think from all those interactions, it planted a seed in my head that, maybe I should start there, right? Because I've seen a lot of private jewelers literally start like this. They get a good manufacturer, they get a good source at the back, they have some designing skills, of course, and then when they get a client, they design for a client, and boom, they're a business.
Oh, that's really very cool. There's a saying, they say there's no such thing as luck. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So I think it's quite good in terms of like showing about your statement that you mentioned just now, where not that you were preparing for this, but because you were involved in the environment where it's about jewelry, you knew about the space. When the opportunity came, basically, you were able to seize that, right? So I thought that was really cool. Actually, that's also how I jumped into sales, because I mean, when I was looking at people in trade shows, I see what they do, they sell. I'm like, okay, I think I can do that too. Like, actually, what do you do? Oh, I sell a software. Okay, I want to try that. So I really resonate with that. All right, so now I just wanted to talk about the side hustle, right? So now you knew about this from your friends. You realized that there's a gap, but you also wanted to have money, right? So you wanted to work first, to learn first. So the only way to do that is to have a side hustle. How did you start that as a side hustle? I mean, you had your full-time job.
Yep.
Starting a side hustle with a real business is not easy. People do it full-time. How do you do a side hustle? Who actually was your first customer that then started it all?
So I think, the whole side hustle, kind of thing, it also came about by accident, right? So there was a period before I joined that's where I met you, PwC, right? I actually 6 months to try the business. And during that 6 months, I learned that it was not easy. Over that 6 months, I don't know, I sold like 12 rings. I probably wasn't making anything after minusing all the costs and all that. So that's why I had a tail within my legs that I had to, go back and get a corporate job.
Okay.
So, and because of that first 6 months, when I transited back into the corporate world, I realized I could work on the business on the weekends. So
you first started full business, had almost basically 2 sales per month.
that's right.
You
All
earn
friends.
basically no money. You only did for friends. You basically charge at cost price and decided after 6 months, you know what? I actually need money.
That's
So
right.
I went back to work and then you started doing it on the side.
Yes, that's how I started. Because I started really
Okay.
only for friends,
Okay.
I did make some money, but it's like by the time, you invest back into marketing
Right.
and all that, it's basically, you're slightly bleeding.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't know that. So that's really cool. Like, I guess you want to go full in, and then you realize that we have to be realistic, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
So now that segues a very good to the next question I wanted to ask. So now you're doing it on the side, right? Your brand is building in Diamond Ateliers. I believe from your career you jumped over to join Salesforce, a very good tech company as well. At that point of time, leading SaaS company, leading employer, sorry, in Singapore, and you have your side business, which is Diamond Ateliers, which was also growing, and you had that experience before where you did full on that Diamond Ateliers it's not as easy as you would think.
Yep.
Right? Now, a lot of founders and builders will go towards this stage where you have to make a decision. The business is not growing.
Yep.
Do I go all in to my business, or do I continue the side hustle, and for how long? Or should I give up and just do corporate full time? How do you make the decision that, hey, I'm going to go full time now on Diamond Ateliers? I am not afraid of doing that, even though I had failures in the past in my first 6 months when I was building Diamond Ateliers.
So I think, it does look very simple in the terms if you're going to look as, do you go all in or not? But I think the reason why I was able to go all in is because of the foundations I've set up for the business.
Okay.
While I left Salesforce in 2022, I was actually working full-time corporate with the side hustle since 2019. So I had a good, 3-year runway where I could build my reserve and build a business. And I often explain to a lot of my friends as well, I would say that, when you have a side hustle and you find that there's potential in the business, your full-time job allows you to, survive, and you are able to reinvest your business profits much faster. Of course, if you're a private investor or very rich, it's a different equation. But of course, in this sense, I was able to compound the business over a 3-year period while living off my salary. And when time came, it's 2022.
Yep.
It's a tech boom. I don't really remember it. It was a very big tech boom. And, I was turning 29. I also told myself, look, how long more do I have, to actually push on both sides?
Yep.
And I just opened my new office, right? That Spaces. And I said that, look, if I'm going to open my office, I should try running 7 days, right? And that's where I decided, and if I wanted to move ahead at work, I knew that it would affect DA, definitely, and I wouldn't have the bandwidth to run the business. And in the end, I just told myself I had to bet on myself. And if I were to fail, well, that job will be there waiting for me.
That gave me goosebumps, man. That was really good. Hearing your story, it really sounds that you are a very well calculated man. You start small first. You build everything from the get go. 6 months, had some difficulties. Realized, okay, I need money. Started working. Built your brand. Went to tech boom. I believe that when you mentioned 2022, I don't think it was an easy decision, right?
Of course.
I mean, the tech boom was there. You probably were doing well. You were opening up. You mentioned the first, I guess, physical store in Arcs Spaces. You mentioned.
Yep.
And then you have to make a decision of whether or not you should leave your stable income and go there. And I think one thing that struck me was what you said, which was betting on yourself. So if, let's say, Diamond Ateliers was to crash, okay, let's touch wood.
Yep,
right?
of course, touch a lot of wood.
My hands are all on wood. But imagine Diamond Ateliers is no more. Do you think you can rebuild a similar or even better brand?
I think with the knowledge I have, I would say I'm confident to do it again, but a part of me always feel that, for any business to take off, it's like you need a bit of luck. And if I do have the same luck as I have before, maybe I can do it, but I would say I need a huge slice of luck.
How important is luck in a business?
I think it's very, very, very important.
Do you chance upon luck or do you make your own luck?
Of course, you have to try your best to make the best out of, the luck and the opportunities that present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes there's a lot of decisions that you make in the past. You have no idea that they were right or wrong decisions.
Right.
I'm not saying that all my decisions that day were right? I made bad ones, obviously.
Yep.
But some of the very good ones came out of like sheer luck, right? Like for me, like one of the biggest decisions, of course, was to pivot into lab diamonds.
Oh, yeah.
And I was very lucky to stumble upon it and act on it quick enough to actually, get in and build a brand before a lot of other people could do the same. And that has probably led, build the whole road that I'm still, working on at this point in time.
You mentioned about moving people first to buy from a brand that they don't know about, right? Versus all your traditional brands. Then you talked about how people now move from natural to lab grown, you mentioned. How I can imagine that trust has to be probably the most important thing for them to trust to buy a brand that has no brand at the start and to change their perception about diamonds from natural versus lab grown. How important is trust, do you think, in diamonds and jewellery? And how were you able to create this trust amongst your customer base?
So I think, so this question is two-pronged, right? So first, I will just talk about the trust in the brand part. So at the very start of the business, there is no brand, right? You're barely a business at the start. And right at the start, a lot of it depends on the founder's personality. DA used to be all me. DA is Don. That's the past. And a lot of it came from fulfilling the promises that you make to your first 10 customers, your first 20 customers. And then you get the referrals, you get that resonance in the market. But of course, it takes a lot of time, right? Your first 10 customers, probably no one will still hear about you. But when it comes to your 50, your 100, your 200 customers, and those people speaking good things about you, fulfilling those promises, that is what brings the next 200, 300, 400 customers. And that is what transits a no brand into a brand, right? Because when I had the first 1-2 customers, I knew all their names. First 50 customers, I knew all their names. But right now, of course, I need a CRM.
Customer obsession, time, network really compounds from what you're mentioning, right?
It does compound, and it takes a lot of time. And it's, and until today, I do have customers, that have bought from me, I think 2019, 2020, they still come back and we still serve them, right? And then they say, I'm so lucky to have gotten from you. And I'm like, that's the brand.
Wow, very cool, man. You mentioned a lot of Don, about you being, Don is Diamond Ateliers, right? But eventually as you're scaling, let's talk about the growing part, right? It can't just be you. It has to be your team. You have to multiply Don. You need to see how 5 Dons is better than 1.
Absolutely.
Right. How do you do that? How do you start letting go? How do you start thinking, hey, how can I impart my knowledge that you've built over the past 20 plus years being in the industry? Because your parents are in it, your family was in it, so you know more than most people. How do you, if you talk about AI, transfer the MD file over to the next person?
So I think, it's like, well, I think you would know, right? You're a leader. You're going to decide. There's just so many things to do.
Yeah.
And there are things that a leader has to do in a business, and there are things that a leader can delegate, right? So and you need to have that clarity of understanding that what is your job and what is the job that your team can do. So in terms of functions, the first delegation that I started to do was actually sales, right? So I started, have, of course, one of my guys, Edward, shadowing me. And then eventually I sit in on his appointments, and then I let him run on his own, right? Of course, in between, we had all the trainings, we had all the, tests, customer, trials and all that. But
So you guys did role plays?
we did a lot of role plays, yes, that's the word I was trying to say. And, I started to realize, as I expanded my sales, I was able to, take in more sales. Because when I trained Ed, it became like, I could run 2 appointment slots at the same time, right? So I technically doubled my output. And now, of course, I've trained another guy. So like basically those 2 people are, Zane, and they're taking most of the sales. I also have Pat. And what I realized that only I can do is the vision of where the business is heading. What's next? What has to be considered for the business, the whole strategic vision and the decision making of what to do next. That's actually on me. So I kept that with me. Right? And I think that's important. And of course, I take charge of all the whole marketing direction and branding as well.
So marketing is still falling under you?
Marketing, branding, strategic vision, all that. It has to fall with me. But in terms of like running the sales, running the operations, I think those parts can be delegated out.
And what was, when it comes to delegation, everybody will always think this way, right? It's much better, it's much faster as well if I do it myself, because you're the founder, you know everything, right? What was the hardest thing that you feel you have to let go because you have to remove yourself from that? What was the hardest part of it?
I can tell you it's really letting go of sales.
Okay.
Because, I'm sales by nature, it's my star skill, I would say. Right? I used to sell to every single customer.
Okay.
Right? At one point, I was doing 50 customers.
So you're good at sales, huh?
Yeah. I would think so, right? So, and for me, it's that I get a lot of acknowledgement from that. And it made me feel good about myself when I closed the sale, made a friend, and had that, referral compounding and all that. And suddenly, I'm, of course, now where I have to actually give 80-90% of my customers away to my team. So my distance from my clients, which I thought were like my supporters, were getting further. But of course, I think I'm also very lucky because I worked in Salesforce and all that. I started to see the whole organization thing. I'm like, this is the only way. And I think there's no way to, to have the best of both worlds if you want to scale up your business and do everything.
It's all about trade-offs, right?
It's all about trade-offs.
All right. All right. Changing gear, I do want to look at where you are now at, which is you have a store in Orchard Central.
That's
level
right. Centrepoint, 3rd floor, 0305.
0305 Centrepoint, right? Moving from your house and then to a co-working space and then now to your own store. How has it changed? Has the customer trust in you changed? Has the expectation changed for your team or the team towards you? And how is this affecting you as a leader, as a founder?
It's like all 3 phases are like 3 distinct phases of DA itself. At the start, of course, everything ran through me. And when I moved to spaces, I start having a smaller team, but still mostly me. And of course, right now, it's a very, very different game where, pretty much 80-90% of the sales is handled by my team. And a lot of it, I really handle the whole, marketing, PR, and that side of the equation. And I think, in terms of customers, we are seeing a lot of, we are having an increased volume, thankfully, because now we are literally there 7 days a week. And we are, of course, again, 7 days a week, available, 11 to 8 for more hours. And pretty much the range of walk-in of customers have increased a lot as well, right? I'm not saying, of course, and I also realized after moving into a store, and as the volume of customers increase, slowly we are getting towards more of the top of the funnel customers as well. So of course we are not expecting I'm not expecting a similar close rate to let's say the past when I was at Spaces where my conversion rate was really high, and pretty much right now, of course, my conversion rates probably have halved from there. But in terms of the volume of customers, we probably see, I would say, easily double to triple what we see at Spaces.
So it's like you mentioned, trade-offs, right? You have lower conversions.
That's right.
Because you're scaling top funnel. But as a business leader, you have to take that judgment, make that decision, because ultimately you're trying to get better profits, better revenue. When you talk about delegation and growth and now having your own store, I guess having more sales associates under you who are living and breathing your brand and the way you sell, your DNA in selling, people will start losing control because you have no visibility of all through your different conversations that your salesperson will have with customers, right? How do you do quality control? How do you ensure that you maintain a certain level of standards?
So I think, of course, we do have to firstly have a lot of trust in your team. I think that's one. And definitely, I learned over the years is not trying to micromanage your team members. While, of course, on paper, the best way is to sit in on every single appointment. That's not really possible. But, of course, where, I really step in is when, of course, let's say if a customer flag out any difference, that's one. If there's any complaints or anything, I'll be the first one to step in. Or if there's, basically any issue that pops up from the team to me, and then that's where I start, looking into a situation. If not, for me right now, I just to see, are we converting well? And of course, are we, producing the rings and making sure that they come in on time?
As a leader, how do you ensure, I'm curious, especially for offline, right? It's very different from online, that even when you're not there, let's say you're away, that people are still able to know that they have the knowledge to sell, even the big boss isn't there to maybe help them or to help them close certain more difficult deals?
I think it takes about 2 to 3 months to actually get the whole
Do
basics.
you think that the way your team sells is different from how other jewellery brands, diamond ring brands sell?
I suppose you would have some similarities as well, but pretty much we will do a bit more consultative, and basically the people that we have at that seat need to really go in from the perspective that we are also here to try to find a profile that we like, and we're not here to actually sell to everybody, right? So, and that lifts the pressure of I need to convert this client. And usually it's that pressure that causes that salesperson to go into a very salesy mood and basically kills the deal anyway.
So you apply what you learned from, I assume, Salesforce, like you mentioned, consultative qualifying on the leads. What you've learned from SaaS. You've mentioned you were a consultant as well in PwC, right? So all of that, I guess, was applied to how you enable your team, how you grow with them. So applying those lessons, I guess, has allowed you to, like you mentioned, double or triple your brand, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. I do have another question I wanted to ask. Many people would say that, hey, Don built DA because he had unfair advantage, right? Because your grandfather was in jewellery, your father was in jewellery or diamonds. So very naturally, you have an edge over other people that, of course, you're going to succeed, right? He's Don. His family, he came from jewellery background. Obviously, he will succeed. What do you say to that? Is that real? Do you think that is something that might not be accurate? What is your take on that?
Well, my take on it is that, it's true. I do have advantage. I don't deny it, but I would say it's also true that I did build DA from ground up because there was nothing in Singapore, right? And, it links to my second point that I said, right? I learned over the years is that you can't please everybody.
Right.
Right? There is no way you can please everybody. And to my naysayers, I'm like, live your life because I'm living mine and I don't care about yours.
Oh, that's really strong. So yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting that you mentioned was that knowing what is your unfair advantage and utilizing it, right? And I believe, like what you mentioned, everyone has a certain advantage. But I guess putting someone in the same shoes as you, who might have similar background in other industry, the question is whether or not they use their advantage to help not just themselves but even other people, right? I mean, I guess the way I look at it as well, through you and your efforts, you obviously help people find happiness in a lot of things, not just about finding a job with you, but also having one of the most important sentiment of their life, which is a ring, right? So yeah, man, I really, really think that was a good one. And I feel that this is something that a lot of people would be learning a lot from in terms of that mindset. Yeah. And I guess final question I have for you is, if let's say you were to look at your competitors, right? There's so many out there. And right now there's AI.
Yep.
Right? I have to talk about AI because we are an AI company.
Yes.
How do you think AI and the usage of AI can help the industry or even your business in the next phase of your growth?
Well, I always say that I'm very lucky. I have a tech background, so I'm very open to AI, and I see that there's many ways that AI can impact. You just need to talk about it. Firstly, operationally, I think everyone's seeing how quickly a lot of administrative stuff can be automated. You talk about your dashboards, your internal working, your efficiency will increase, and then. But what I really, really like about AI, which I have already implemented, is a lot on Gen AI, of course, where now we are actually able to push the boundary of bespoke.
Okay.
Right? Where in the past, bespoke meant you need to take a leap of faith with me, where you need to trust that I know my stuff and that I can, translate your vision accurately enough into a ring. And we are just going to take a bet on that. But right now, with Gen AI, is that we are able to actually showcase to you how your ring looks before it's made. And we're not just talking about simple rings, we're talking about even more complicated stuff. So, and not only that, we allow you to explore many, many different options. And all this can be done very, very quickly. So we're talking about really very fast speed. Like in the past, just for, let's say, my Hong Kong team to actually produce a cat, takes them 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even a month. But right now with AI, matter of hours.
Wow.
So we are actually, improving the whole consumer experience on that, right? Firstly, in terms of speed. Second, in terms of quality. And basically, the leap of faith that, we mentioned, the leap of faith is like, there's no need to leap anymore,
And that will help in your conversion for sure.
Absolutely. It gives the customer so much more assurance, right? That they're absolutely going to get this ring.
They know what they can choose from. They know how it's going to look like.
Yeah.
There's no ambiguity there.
Absolutely.
It builds that brand loyalty as well.
Yeah, and AI is, in that sense, of course, it's coupled with our knowledge. And our knowledge right now is to actually say whether that this image or that is produced by AI, whether it's feasible in real place. Because I mean, of course, there are a lot of my customers that do AI themselves and generate very, very funny stuff. But it's up to us to discern whether it's feasible. Right. So when we add that feasible understanding to AI, we are gonna push bespoke to another level.
Right. So AI is there. It's not there to replace. AI is there to help, to guide, but ultimately, as you mentioned, how AI interacts with the knowledge that you have in your years and years of experience, your practical knowledge about how rings are built, what's not possible, what's possible, comes intertwined together in terms of how AI and human are going to work in the future. And that's how you see the brand and how you see diamonds moving forward.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for such an insightful discussion. When we end every podcast, we like to do what we call the lightning round.
Oh, nice.
Right, so I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Okay, I don't need you to overthink. You don't have to give too much elaboration. Just share with what you have in mind. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Right. First things first. What's one thing every guy should know before they propose?
You better know what your girlfriend wants. I think that's important.
Okay. What's the worst advice a person can give to side hustler founders?
I think there's don't go all in too quickly.
Don't go all in too quickly.
Yeah, don't test the depth of water with 2 feet, right? You know.
All right, last one. If you had to restart DA, okay, and I only give you $1,000 US, what will you do first?
Really, I think now it's the social media game.
Okay.
You know, I would just launch myself using TikTok and run live stream and probably be available on social media 24/7.
So TikTok will be your first bet.
TikTok will be my first bet.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Don. Building a brand takes way longer than what people think, as you mentioned. You know, Don, what struck me about today's conversation is that you grew up surrounded by the industry, the trade show, the factories, the jewellery, and you still chose to start from scratch and to build this brand on your own terms. And that's something that is not easy. That's a choice. So for anyone listening, if you are in the family business, the family trade, learn from Don. Always think about what you can do different. Be your own brand, be your own voice, do things differently. See what you can learn from other businesses, from other people. How can that be impactful in terms of how you bring the next generation? And for a brand like yours in the third generation, I think what you've built is truly, truly amazing. Everyone and anyone around me today, if they're buying rings, they will definitely consider Don from Diamond Ateliers. So I think that's kind of the brand that you've built over this past 7 years, man. And I think that's something phenomenal. So thank you so much. It was a very, very rich and enormous gold nuggets that you've shared with me today. And for anyone listening, hope you guys enjoyed this session. That's what SleekTalks is all about. It's about real builders, real stories, no highlight reel. Don, thank you for being on SleekTalks.
Thanks for having me, Navi.